Do you want to stay more focused on the right goals in your life, or even just figure out what the right goals are for you? Do you want clarity? Do you want better work-life balance? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Success Through Failure.
Welcome to the Success Through Failure podcast, the show that reveals failure as your path to success. You'll listen to intriguing interviews with some of the most successful people on the planet and learn how their failures became a launchpad for success and how yours can too. Here's your host, former Division I All-American wrestler, former Division I head coach, speaker, and personal coach, Jim Harshaw.
Welcome to another episode of Success Through Failure. Today, I bring you Coach Mike Lightfoot. Ever since I finished my career as a Division I All-American athlete, I longed for not only the clarity of purpose that I had as an athlete, but also the accountability that comes with aspiring for big goals with a team of like-minded people. Then I discovered mastermind groups. Masterminds are small groups of like-minded people who get together either in person or over Skype or just over the phone to provide support, feedback, and advice to other members of the group. So I dove in and I learned all I could about mastermind groups, and then I finally launched my own. And the change was instant. I regained the accountability of being part of a group of like-minded, hardworking individuals who hold me to a higher standard. My mastermind group helps me get feedback and advice and even validation when I'm making big decisions in my life. And I have clarity and focus and accountability again, just like when I was an athlete. I've now facilitated dozens of high performers in mastermind groups. I'm talking Olympians and MBAs and neurosurgeons and professional athletes and entrepreneurs and lots of others. I've taken everything you need to know to start your own mastermind group, and I've put it into a short 10-page ebook titled The Quick and Easy Guide to Starting Your Own Mastermind Group in 30 Days or Less. Grab a copy of this free ebook by going to jimharshawjr.com/mastermind. That's jimharshawjr.com/mastermind. Mike is a retired college basketball coach known for his career at Bethel College, an NAIA school in Iowa. He was the fastest winning coach in college basketball history. He reached the 300, 400, and 500 win plateau faster than any other coach. He was inducted into the NAIA Hall of Fame while he was still coaching in 2009. Today, he helps an organization called Nations of Coaches, whose mission is to, quote, build complete champions that achieve a higher level of play. And we're going to translate that for you, the listener, into sort of the real world and how you apply these lessons to the real world. And as usual, if you don't have time to listen to the entire episode, or if you hear something you like, but you don't have a chance to write it down, make sure you grab your copy of the action plan. Just go to jimharshawjr.com/action. That's jimharshawjr.com/action. Mike, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. And I just want to thank you for the things that you're doing out there. It's much needed in our culture, especially not only in our athletic culture, but in our country today. That you've got to be able to learn to grow and develop. And many times you have to fall and pick yourself up off the mat to do that. And we all know that going through life's lessons. But I really appreciate what you're doing for the athletes and men and women across this country.
Well, thank you for the kind words, and I'm really glad that Dan Tudor introduced us. Dan Tudor, for the listener, if you want to hear my episode with Dan, I had him on episode number 83. But Dan just really highly recommended you, and then I started looking into your background, Mike, and I said, wow, I've got to have this guy on the show. So let's just start with this. Let's start with your background, Mike. Tell us maybe a little bit about where you grew up and where you're from and sort of the 30,000-foot view of how you got from there to where you're at now.
Well, the thing that I grew up here in Indiana. It's been a great place for me to grow up. But if you're from Indiana, you grow up very quickly with an orange basketball in your hand. You don't know anything other than that. Indiana has, for those that maybe not know, they have 19 of the 20th largest gyms in high school gyms in the country in our state alone. And so you just grow up. It's a fixation. It's something that you grew up going and seeing, 3,000-4,000 people on a Friday and Saturday night watching high school basketball. So that was my edge. That became the thing that I wanted to do as I participated in sports, was really to try to play basketball first at the high school level. Did that just south of South Bend, Indiana. And after I graduated, I was fortunate to play actually at my alma mater, and also where I coached for 30 years at Bethel College.
And that's in Indiana, not Iowa. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay,
right,
sorry, I got that wrong in the bio.
For those people who get a feel, it's just 3 miles away from Notre Dame. So that's
Gotcha.
right where Bethel's at. I played for an incredible man, Homer Drew, who coached at Bethel for 9 years before he went on and had a lot of success at Valparaiso University. His 2 sons have also had a tremendous amount of success. One's at Vanderbilt, the other one's at Baylor. So the coaching tree, really got into my system, and I just fell in love with not only basketball but coaching basketball. And so it just was a perfect fit for me. And being in Indiana, being able to stay in Indiana and coach in Indiana and play in Indiana, and not be able to have to leave my family, my immediate family, been able to stay close to my family and still be involved in that career I love. It's been a really great ride for me. I think that when you look at life, you want to try to do something that you don't have any regrets. And I've just been really fortunate to live a life of no regrets when it comes to my career.
And you became the fastest winning coach in college basketball history. So quick math, I guess you were probably around 30 years old or so pretty young when you took over as the head coach. And you became the fastest winning coach at 300 and 400 and 500, those win plateaus. Let's cut right to the chase, what all the listeners want to hear. What's your secret, Mike?
Have better. Johnny Wooden said it best: have better players than anybody else. I think that if you do that, you do have a lot more winning. But I think the thing that really has impacted me is just making sure that you're working as hard as you can. And that's I'm a type A person. I'm driven for success. I want our players to play with a tremendous part of excellence. But it didn't start out that way. I started out, first of all, at a high school as a high school coach, and we were terrible. We were one of the worst teams in Indiana at the high school level. And so after my very first year of coaching, I thought, I think I'm going to get out of it. I don't think I can stay in this. My team's bad, and I thought I knew something about this thing called coaching, but I didn't. I ended up going to a clinic up in Chicago and thinking that, okay, I'm going to learn some things here. And this was back in 1978, 79. And it was a time of year where all the coaches get together in the spring. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to figure some things out here and say, do I want to do this for the rest of my life, or is this something that it's not going to work and I got to find something else? That clinic made a profound statement on my life and on my career, because I did not learn one thing there about X's and O's. But while that was going on, while that clinic was going on, I actually couldn't even get into the auditorium. It was packed. So I had to sit out in the hallway, leaning against the wall, and writing down things that Hubie Brown was talking about. Hubie's still around. He does NBA games. But the thing that changed my life and changed my professional career was about halfway through the clinic, I kind of glanced to my right side, and sitting right beside me on the wall was a guy named John Wooden,
wow,
who is an icon in coaching and athletics. I think they've recognized him as not only the greatest basketball coach of all time, maybe the greatest coach of all time.
Sure.
And so he was sitting right beside me, and I glanced to my right, and every time he would write something down, I would write it down. I thought, well, I'm going to learn from the best. Well, he took meticulous notes in everything that the clinicians were talking about. And, that taught me a lot, because here's a guy that won 10 national championships, and he was still eager to learn. But probably the biggest thing that impacted my entire life and my career, and I think it's something I share with a lot of people, this was 1979. Johnny Wooden was retired from coaching, but he was a lifelong learner. And that taught me immediately that, one, I have a lot more to learn, and also that when I think I've learned it all in my profession or my career, I've got to take a step back and say there's more to learn. And so that really was a nugget that took me back to my coaching days and said, hey, I've got to continue to be a learner. I've got to be able to think outside the box. And my setbacks that I had as a young coach with no success at the high school level finally allowed me to grow into success at the college level.
And so it's interesting to hear you talk about John Wooden, and it sounds like he humbled himself and always had that beginner's mindset. And I think that's something that's hard for people to do, especially people that have been around and had some success and maybe feel like, people should be listening to them now. Sometimes we need to just, close our mouths and open our minds and just have that beginner's mindset, no matter how good we are at something or how successful we've been in the past at something.
Yes, and so what I would do, and then I've really encouraged, especially young people out there, it doesn't mean if they could be 12 or they could be 20 or they could be an adult. I think that one of the keys to success is finding those people that have had a lot of success in life and actually spend time with them and talk to them and find their story. It's usually amazing because most of the coaches and businessmen and people out there that have had what we call success in life have really done it through failure. And we don't see or know the failure. We don't recognize that, Michael Jordan took 29 last-second shots that he missed,
right,
and he failed at. So there are times when we look at our lives and we just think, we only think we see success through the eyes of people that are just walking on TV and the billboards. But many times those people have had lots of failure along the way. And so my career was based on spending time with people that I saw that were successful, and then kind of found out why they're successful, and then try to model it rather than try to reinvent something that maybe wasn't there. And that's been that was the reason why I was able to be successful right from the start, because I was able to learn a lot from great people that had success before me.
And for any listener who's been around, listened to many of my podcast episodes, you'll know that I talk about this environment of excellence. And certainly when I was an athlete, I look back at that time and I was surrounded by the right people. Thank goodness I was surrounded by the right people. And that's what helped me sort of raise my standard and be the best version of myself at that point in time. Part of it's raising your standard. Part of it is that modeling success that Mike's talking about here. And Mike, you mentioned failure, and we look at a guy like you, and you're I think you ended up with how many total wins did you end up with?
Around 800.
Around 800 wins
at the college level.
Is that the winningest? Yeah. Are you the winningest coach in basketball history then with that?
In Indiana.
I
passed up a guy named there was a guy named Bob Knight that I was able to pass up last few years, but in Indiana, 800. But we have Coach Krzyzewski's got over 1,000, and there's a few other people that
is just
have over 1,000 wins.
Astronomical number. And you're throwing out, Bob Knight and Mike Krzyzewski. I mean, some of these guys are just sort of the elite of the elite in the coaching world. So you're in those ranks, and it's just incredible to hear those kind of numbers. But also, it's incredible to hear from somebody like you who can talk about failure. Can you share a time where you failed? I mean, because it's easy for someone from the outside looking in at you and think, you started coaching early, you had a young age and you reached 300 before anybody else, 400, 500. You kept hitting these plateaus faster than any other coach. And but were there failures along the way for somebody like you?
Oh, there's lots of failures. I think one of the things that I failed at was balance. Success creates a monster. And for those that have been successful in athletics, I'm talking to young people out there right now that have been successful in athletics. Their identity and their priorities kind of focus in on themselves because they've had success and accolades. And so it's kind of like, look what I've done, what I've accomplished. And probably the biggest thing for me was getting wrapped up in success to the point where with success creates kind of a fakeness or a phoniness you don't realize. This is some of the things that are happening around you, and you're just creating really a monster of success. And with that, I become driven to want more success and want more success. And I think that there's been so many times in life where you look back and you think, boy, my priorities weren't always on the right plane. I was probably thinking more about my next step or my next win or my next game rather than thinking about how I need to do a great job of being a dad or a father. And so, it took me a while to realize, and I have an incredible wife that basically said, if this is going to work, we're going to have to work together and we're going to have to be on the same team. And so that was probably the biggest thing, the failure of not realizing the things I needed to get right before. You can be successful on the court, you can be successful in the business world, but if you're not successful at home, it really doesn't matter. And so learning those lessons early and understanding that I need to do a better job at the home front, I call it the home court. I got to be better at the home court so I can be a better person and a better dad and a better husband, and then also be a better coach and a better administrator or a better person that's going to impact other people's lives.
So how did you do it? I mean, you said you felt that failure of not having that balance and maybe not being the father and or the husband that you wanted to be, that you should be. And then, but you made a shift, some kind of shift. I don't know what it was, but maybe you can share with us. And then, but then you continued to be successful at your profession, because everybody listening to this show, Mike, they want to crush it at work. They want to be really successful, probably make a lot of money, get the promotion, have a successful business, whatever the case might be professionally. They also want to personally, be a great father or husband for the men or spouse, wife, mother for the women. And also, stay fit. A lot of former athletes listen to this, and we have this sort of this vision of ourselves as a fit person. So we're trying to find that balance. How did you do it? How do you go about that?
Yeah. I think, first of all, I had to take a step back and have really an inventory. As we think about our lives, we have to think about, what's in our inventory, what's the most important things, what's my priorities. And so I think I really had to get my priorities straight with my faith, my family, and then my career. And so rather than have my career, maybe my family and my faith, I flipped those and really kind of decided that this was the time where I was going to put those things in perspective and focus in on those things. The other thing that I think that many people that have had early success or success in life, we fail that we want to control everything and every aspect of our professional career. And so the main thing that I did early was to delegate. I quickly decided that if I was going to be able to do this and do this well at all fronts, I was going to have to delegate the responsibilities of things that needed to be done and done well. It came a point where no longer did I just say it was all on me, or I had to do everything, and I wouldn't trust or allow someone else to grow. So I started putting responsibilities on people around me to continue to have this high standards. And so I had to coach them well on what I wanted done, and then take it over and hand them the baton and say, it's now your time to help this program, this business, whatever we're doing successfully, because I need to be able to delegate. And so I think delegation is a key part of all of this. You can still be successful in all fronts, but many times you have to be able to have right people around you. As you mentioned before, getting the right people on the bus with you, and then giving them responsibility that they're going to continue to model what you want, and at the same time develop their skill set so they can be performing and have a purpose in their lives. It's going to entitle them to be having value. So I've been able to balance that by delegating. And so in many ways, I've learned that. I think if any coach or any person in the business world is going to be successful for a long time, they're going to have to stay away from burnout. And the only way you can do that is put a lot of good people around you that's going to allow you to delegate.
I think a lot of people struggle with delegation because they feel like if it's going to be done right, I've got to do it myself, or it's just something that, it's easier for me to do it than teach somebody else to do it. I mean, any thoughts on how to take baby steps or how to create the mindset in learning how to delegate better?
I think even the moms out there that say, hey, go pick up your toys, and then they look around and they think, boy, I'm going to pick them up because I can get it done a lot quicker. Well, that's not teaching your kids the responsibility of picking up your toys. You got to delegate those responsibilities. For me, in my professional career, I would have to. I continued to evaluate how good a teacher I was, not only to my players but also to my coaching staff, making sure that I gave clear direction, and then many times follow up is very important. Rather than saying, oh, you didn't get it right, I've got to draw back, I've got to take this over again, I needed to evaluate my performance and how I was teaching and how I was preparing our assistant coaches. And so lots of times I had to kind of bite my tongue. And sometimes I had to say, you know what, this isn't the way I would have done it, but it's still going to work out. So I had to do that. Because I think that the tendency of all successful leaders is to, monopolize everything that's going on. And so I think I had to learn to be more patient. I had to do a better job at teaching my staff and going over those things. My expectations had to be very, very clear. Then also had to learn a very valuable lesson was that my way doesn't have to be the only way. Mm-hmm. There's other ways to skin a cat. There's other ways to be able to communicate. There's other ways to be successful. And it just doesn't have to be my way in order to do that.
Tell us about Nations of Coaches. What is Nations of Coaches, and why is it important?
Wow, this is so important. We have a broken product at the college level in college basketball. When we hear about the scandals and we see the things that have happened with Rick Pitino and all the other things that are happening currently, the product is broken because the priorities have gotten out of place. Here's some things I'd like to share. With college basketball in our country, we see March Madness. We all are wrapped up. You don't even have to be a fan of basketball, but you're a fan for March Madness. Then when you look at some of the things that have happened, the divorce rate amongst college basketball coaches is 71%.
Wow.
There are so many coaches out there that have sacrificed their families and the relationship with their wife because they are so busy trying to climb the ladder of coaching. We see all the great coaches. We admire all the success we see in March with all these tremendous coaches. But unfortunately, for most of them, 71% of them, there's been a price to pay. They've been moving from one place to the other. And many times people don't realize when a coach moves, that brings his whole family in that move. And who gets left with the pieces that have to be put together? Who's going to get a house? Who's going to sell a house? Who's going to buy the house? Who's going to make sure the kids get to the right schools? Who's going to find a dentist and a doctor and all? It's the wife. And many times after 2 or 3 moves in 3 or 4 years, it gets to the point where the wife is saying, I didn't sign up for this. This is absolutely crazy. So Nations of Coaches is basically an organization that's under the umbrella, really, of the National Association of all basketball coaches across this country. And it's basically to try to get our game back. It's an opportunity to understand that James Naismith, the inventor of the game, really invented the game for developing character in players. And the Nation of Coaches is going back to try to say, hey, we need to understand that we need to develop character in players It's not about big TV contracts. It's not about all the other issues that come about. And so Nation of Coaches is basically to do one thing, serve coaches. We do a great job sometimes of serving athletes, but many times we see that we don't serve coaches. And so we come along and mentor coaches, find people that will help support those coaches and become a great listener to them. And really what I've found, and I've experienced myself, coaches don't trust anybody. You know, as you coached wrestling, you know what it's like at the college level.
Sure.
And everybody wants a piece of you. Everybody wants something of you. And so your circle gets very, very small. And so a Nation of Coaches is an organization that comes in there and says, you know what, we're going to be there for the coach. We want to try, if we can have the coach right, if we can help them in their relationship with their wife, or we can help them support their program by having maybe an older man that can come along and mentor this guy, then we know that if we can get the coach right, then we know the player is going to be right. We can help change the character and the culture of the college game. And probably the other thing that's happening too across this country with Division I college basketball is that you talked about role model. Many of our young men that are playing basketball do not have a male role model in their home. 80% of Division I college basketball players don't have a biological father in their household. And so we're seeing that we need to have someone step in and help these young men live life and understand how a man actually should live life. So I've just been really fortunate as I go to Final Fours. I would just see the Nation of Coaches and see what they were doing in the lives of coaches. And so I finally said, you know what, it's time for me to give back to the game that has been so great to me. And so Nation of Coaches has been a tremendous fit for me.
Yeah, I imagine it has. It's something that makes a lot of sense at every level. You hear so many of these problems and challenges in the sport, and you certainly hear about it in college basketball. And you know, people look at college sports and they see football and basketball on television. That's what they think of. But college sports is so much bigger than that. It's so much more than that. And certainly there are only a small number of those athletes that we see playing NCAA sports that go on to the pros. But for the majority of the others who don't even go on to the pros, they're not. It's all about these educational experiences for all of them, for 100% of them. It's all about the educational experiences. I certainly had an amazing experience as a college athlete, was successful in my sport, and I carry those lessons with me, regardless of the success, really, with me every day. And that's what really is the whole point of college athletics. And a lot of the money and the business around it has sort of started to cloud that. But at the end of the day, it's still about the education and development of young people.
It is. And, you know, being a wrestler and being so successful like you have been and the great accomplishments you had, that one of the things that had to happen is you had to have people believe in you as an athlete.
Right.
And so Nation of Coaches really comes along and tries to help that student athlete believe in themselves and also help the coach to that point where he can incorporate, you know, confidence in what he's doing in a broken and altered culture where there's a lot of darkness and there's a lot of dirt. You know, if we can get the coach right, then we know that the player's going to be right. So, you know, we're going to take this one program at a time, and we've had a tremendous amount of success of really getting the coach to be encouraged. The coach then can encourage his student athletes, and then we can see the learning of what athletics can do for a young person, do great things in their lifelong career.
It's interesting, and I want the listener to recognize this, that Mike is talking about an organization that provides leadership and coaching to leaders, to people who are among the best at their sport. They're coaches. They're NCAA college coaches. So they're obviously really good. They're very successful. And you're providing guidance not only to the athletes but to the leaders in the sport. Yeah. And I'm a big believer that everybody needs a coach. And what you're talking about here is providing leadership and coaching to leaders. Yes.
And, you know, that's, like you said, that's so important that people that are listening to this recognize that if you're struggling in anything, you need to find a leader that's going to come alongside of you and help support you and be a mentor to you. And lots of times I think we don't do a very good job of that. We don't reach out to people that could be a great mentor because we automatically think they are too busy or they don't want to share their life story. But I have found it just to be the opposite. I've found that if I want to call a very successful businessman or a very successful coach, they're more than welcome to sit down with me and share their life story and give me those nuggets like John Wooden gave me those nuggets, 40 years ago that sustained me and kept me going. And I think that's a secret to success is finding people that have been very successful and spend time with them. Find out what they did to be successful and what they didn't do. They will share with you the failures that they had, and hopefully then we won't make all those same mistakes in our life and in our careers.
And I want to just relate a quick story for the listener that can really, really solidify this in your mind. So for anybody who's ever competed in sports, you realize that you had the right people around you, right? You had goals, you had focus, and you had these people that you were surrounded by with what I've called this environment of excellence. And I went through a time in my life, this was 15 years after I had been, an All-American and a Division I head coach, and got to a point in my life where I had debt up to my eyeballs. I had a failing marriage. I was not spending enough time with my kids. I was in the worst physical condition of my life. And I kind of looked at my life and I said, how did I get here? And I literally, I was looking for a job on Craigslist one night, and I remember just kind of scrolling past the jobs for unpaid internships and paper boys, thinking like, I've got 2 degrees from the #1 public school in the country and have had all this success. Like, how did I get here? And I actually laid down. My wife was already asleep, and I laid down. I was staring at the ceiling, thinking like, how did I turn this into success as an athlete? Because I went through struggle and failure, and it came to me that there were sort of a few things that came to me that night, but one of them that really stood out in my mind was I had the right people in my life. I had people who held me to a higher standard than I felt I could achieve. And when you surround yourself with those people and get that guidance, and I was by all means good, and you even look at guys who were Olympians and NBA, and I mean, LeBron James has a coach, right? The highest performers in the world on the planet have a coach. So it's like, why not the rest of us, right? And what's at stake in sports is maybe the championship, right? Or your career in that sport. But what's at stake in the real world is like your marriage, your family, your livelihood, like all of these things that are so much more important than the starting spot or the state championship or the NCAA championship. There's so many bigger things. And so, I'm a big believer that leaders need leaders, Mike. So thanks for really, for sharing that.
Well, that's, again, your organization and what you're sharing is exactly what people need to hear. We're at a crisis point in this country. I think we have a leadership shortage. We have a lot of people out there that don't understand what leadership really is. They don't have a mentor or anybody that's going to give them advice and direction. And so we need leaders to step up. And so to your listeners that have had success, I guess my challenge to them is, what are you doing? If you're a successful basketball player at the you're a junior in high school and you're listening right now, what are you doing for that elementary kids that idolize you? If you're a businessman in the community and you see people that are struggling, how are you going to lift them up and make their life better? If you're a coach, how can you impact lives that's going to be something for the entire lifetime? Billy Graham said that coaches make more impact on people's lives than anybody else in a lifetime they do in 1 year. And I think lots of times we've all had good, successful people around us, but we need more of them. And so, that's the secret to success, is not being able to be just successful by yourself, but success should be based on how much we can impact other people's lives and see their lives successful.
Amen. Gosh, well said. Mike, my listeners like to get an action item out of these episodes. Is there something that maybe an action item that they can, something they can do in the next 24 to 48 hours to start moving towards a more balanced life, or maybe just a habit that you've done that's really carried you through over your years of success?
Oh, there's okay. Now we're getting into good stuff here. Yeah, there's action statements, because I think lots of times but we don't act upon them. Action statements need to be happening every day. Boy, we're in the new year, and so the first thing that I would suggest to people is, hey, put priorities on your time. You know, we only get so much time each and every day. What are you doing with that? I think you have to be able to spend time in areas, your physical, your spiritual, and your mental. So I think you've got to spend time doing those things every day. You've got to train your mind, you've got to train your faith, and you've got to train your body. And I don't care if they're 18 or 75, you've got to work out. You've got to work out. You've got to get better at being physical. You need to continue to build endurance there. So I think that's very important. I think an action sport, if I would go back and talk to people that have been very successful, I find a recurring theme. They read a lot. Yeah. They read a lot. And, you know, I think sometimes the car becomes their library. They're constantly listening to books, that they're motivated by what they can read. And I think that that's something that a lot of people need to find time to. I think many times we gravitate to the easy stuff of just watching TV or watching an athletic event. We need to have their action step is, am I working out? Am I reading? And then the third one is finding people to talk to that's going to give you insight and direction. And here's the key thing. Know your why. Why do you do what you do? I think the action point that every one of us should do every morning, if we have a why do we do what we do? And then that can align up with our purpose, and we got to know our why and our purpose. Then we just focus on those things, and we don't think about anything else. Man,
this is great. I tell you, for the listener, I'd highly recommend grabbing this action plan. Just go to jimharshawjr.com/action. I'm going to have all this and the cliff notes of all this right in the PDF there. Mike, could you recommend a book? You mentioned reading. Could you recommend a book or two?
You know, Lead for God's Sake is one of my favorites because my assistant coach wrote it.
Yeah, right. And, so for the listener, we were talking about this off air before we hit the record button. Todd Gongwer came and spoke in Charlottesville at a men's group that I'm part of, and I read his book before he came there, Lead for God's Sake, and it's a great book. And I will have the link here in the action plan. And then Mike says he was Mike. He was your assistant coach. That's right, huh?
Yeah, assistant coach for 13 years, and
wow.
We had a challenge. We were going to read 100 books on leadership. Todd had read somewhere that if you read 100 books on one topic, you would consider themselves an authority in that area. So every road trip, we would be reading books on leadership and doing those things. But I just have read and reread a book that I really enjoy. It's called Lincoln on Leadership. I'm a history kind of a guy, and I just love to read about historic figures, but Lincoln is my favorite. And so the book, Lincoln on Leadership, has just had incredible impact because we all see the results of the things that Lincoln was able to accomplish, but we don't realize all the things that he had to do in order to be successful. And then how he led us through during the darkest times in this country in the Civil War. Those are two great must-reads that you have to get your hands on.
Excellent. And for the listener, again, I'll have links to those in the action plan. Mike, for the listener who wants to find you or follow you or interact with you or maybe learn more about Nations of Coaches, where can they go?
Boy, there's a lot of places you can go, but I think I'd love to interact with people, especially through email. And my email is mlightfoot@nations. I got to make sure we say that S is in there. nationsofcoaches.com. mlightfoot@nationsofcoaches.com. I would love to interact with people. I have an opportunity to do that every day. I'm talking to a lot of very, very successful and motivated people. And at the same time, I'm talking with a lot of people that are just getting started in their careers. Maybe it's athletic coaching, maybe it's business or whatever. And I really enjoy investing and have an opportunity to share with those people on Lightfoot at nationsofcoaches.com.
Great. And I will have links to everything that Mike just said there in the action plan. So, Mike, thank you so much for making time to come on the show.
Well, thank you so much. It was really a great opportunity. And again, thank you for what you're doing. Try to build up leaders across this country.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. And for the listener, until next time, take the time to get clear on your goals and embrace failure as a stepping stone on your path to success.